They didn't get invited. Again. And somewhere between the third notification they ignored and the group photo they weren't in, something interesting happened. They stopped caring. Not in a bitter way. In a way that felt like relief. If you've ever sat alone on a Friday night and felt something other than sadness, maybe even peace, stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you might change how you see yourself completely. We've been taught to believe that a full social calendar equals a full life. That the number of people who text you back means something about your worth. But here's the uncomfortable truth nobody talks about. Some of the most psychologically solid people you'll ever meet have almost no friends at all. And it's not because something is wrong with them. It's because something is right. Let's talk about what's actually going on beneath the surface, because there are 5 traits that show up again and again in people who walk through life mostly alone, and once you hear them, you're going to recognize yourself in at least one. Trait 1. They can't fake it even when it would be easier. Think about how much energy most people spend performing. Laughing at jokes that aren't funny. Agreeing with opinions they don't hold. Shrinking themselves to fit into a room. It's exhausting, and most people do it without even noticing anymore. People who end up with few friends often lost or never developed that ability to perform. Not because they're incapable of it, but because something in them refuses. They'd rather sit in silence than fill it with fake enthusiasm. They'd rather be misunderstood than be someone they're not. This isn't social failure. This is a nervous system that rejects pretending. And in a world absolutely saturated with performance, filtered photos, curated personalities, forced positivity, that refusal to fake it quietly costs them invitations. But it also protects something most people never get to keep: an untouched sense of self. Drop a comment if you've ever lost a friendship because you refused to just go along with it. I want to see how many of you relate to this. Trait 2. They stopped outsourcing their emotional stability a long time ago. Here's something psychology doesn't advertise enough. Most people regulate their emotions through other people. A bad day gets fixed with a phone call. Anxiety gets soothed by a group chat. Loneliness gets numbed by constant company. It works, but it also means their emotional floor depends entirely on someone else showing up. People without a big social circle don't get that option. So they build something else instead, an internal floor. They learn to sit with discomfort without needing someone to talk them out of it. They learn to calm themselves down at 2 a.m. instead of texting someone who might not even answer. This looks like independence from the outside. But it's actually something deeper. It's emotional self-sufficiency, and it's one of the rarest skills a person can develop, because most people never get forced to build it. The absence of friends didn't create weakness here. It created a kind of quiet resilience that only shows up under pressure. Trait 3. They'd rather be alone than around the wrong people, and that instinct came from somewhere. This one surprises people. It's not that they can't connect. It's that they've been burned by shallow connection before, and their brain quietly rewired itself to avoid repeating it. Think about it from a survival standpoint. If every time you opened up it went badly, if closeness led to disappointment, betrayal, or just emotional flatness, your mind starts protecting you by raising the bar. Higher standards aren't arrogance. They're scar tissue that turned into wisdom. So instead of collecting acquaintances the way most people collect followers, they start filtering hard. Most people fail the filter, not because they're bad people, but because the filter isn't looking for fine. It's looking for worth the risk. And that number of people is naturally small. Trait 4. They've built a relationship with themselves that most people never even attempt. This is the part that really gets skipped over. When you don't have somewhere to be every weekend, you're left with something most people spend their whole lives avoiding: yourself in a quiet room with no distraction. For most people, that silence is unbearable. Studies on solitude have shown that a lot of people would rather give themselves a mild electric shock than sit alone with their thoughts for 15 minutes. 15 minutes. That's how uncomfortable most humans are in their own company. People with few friends don't get to escape that discomfort. So over time, something shifts. The silence stops being scary and starts being familiar. They start noticing their own patterns, why they react the way they do, what they actually want versus what they think they should want. They develop a kind of self-awareness that people with packed social lives rarely have time to build, because they're too busy managing everyone else's expectations of them. It's not that lonely people are wiser by default. It's that isolation, when it's not resisted, becomes an accidental classroom. And the subject is always the same, you. If this is landing for you right now, if you're starting to see your own life in this, go ahead and hit subscribe because we're just getting to the part that ties everything together. Trait 5. Their loneliness became the exact thing that made them harder to break. Here's the twist most people miss completely. Painful experiences, rejection, isolation, being left out, either shrink a person or expand them. There's no neutral outcome. And the people who don't collapse under years of social exclusion tend to come out the other side with something almost nobody else has: perspective earned the hard way. They stop needing constant reassurance because they already survived the worst version of not having it. They stop fearing judgment because they've already lived through being judged and misunderstood, and they're still standing. What could have been a wound becomes, instead, a kind of armor, not the cold, defensive kind, but the quiet kind that just makes very little rattle them anymore. This is why so many people who seemed isolated in school, or awkward in their 20s, end up becoming the calmest, most self-possessed adults in the room by their 30s or 40s. The isolation wasn't wasted time. It was raw material. And what they built with it is something social ease alone could never have produced. So here's the real question worth sitting with. If you've spent years without a big circle of friends, if you've quietly wondered what's wrong with you, maybe you've been asking the wrong question the entire time. Maybe the real question isn't, why don't I have more friends? Maybe it's, what did I build instead? Because authenticity, emotional independence, high standards, self-awareness, and quiet resilience, those aren't consolation prizes. They're the actual traits that determine how well someone handles life when it gets hard. And the people who have them usually built them alone, in rooms nobody else saw, on nights nobody else showed up for. You don't need to fix this about yourself. You need to recognize what it already gave you. If even one of these 5 hit close to home, tell me which one in the comments. I read every single one, and I want to know which trait you saw yourself in first. And if this made you look at your own life a little differently, stick around. This channel goes deep into the psychology most people are too afraid to talk about, and there's a lot more worth uncovering.